Hey everyone, it's Patrick with Univium. Today I'm going to just make a quick video about when it might be time for you to switch over from Google Sheets to Airtable. I work with a lot of clients that use Google Sheets as a kind of tracking system and whatnot. It's very common. Um, However, recently I've been seeing a lot of opportunities where I really feel like switching over to a platform such as Airtable could really help uh, benefit small businesses by helping them, uh, you know, scale their systems, organize their data, streamline their processes, streamline their systems, and also, automate as much as they can off that data. So I figured I'd make a quick video explaining, some really key points that I think not a lot of people think about, or maybe they do. Either way, so yeah. So I guess some of the main things that I think we need to take into consideration if you look at, I made some notes. So some key definitions, um, front end versus back end. So if you may be familiar with it, if not, front end's like the user facing interface where people kind of interact with data, interact with different elements of the data, that sort of thing. And the back end is where the actual data is stored and managed and structured and that sort of thing. And so if you're not familiar with those terms, just bear with me. I think in a couple minutes it'll kind of make more sense. Then some other concepts to keep in mind about the differences. What are the differences between Google Sheets and Airtable? Well, Google Sheets is obviously it's a spreadsheet, kind of like Excel, or just like Excel, really. And that's really a more of a grid-based tool that has a flat uh, data structure, and it's used more for managing simpler, smaller data sets, very often for like ad hoc tasks and ad hoc reporting. Um, and then you have a database, which is um, more of a structured way to manage your data, where you have multiple tables, and those tables have specific relationships between them. So think like projects with multiple or think clients with multiple projects, projects with multiple tasks, projects with multiple, vendors assigned, that sort of thing. So that's kind of how a database works, is it's more relational. And then you have something, I don't know if this is the correct term. I'd say it's more of a new term, is a collaborative database. And that's kind of where Airtable falls in. It's kind of a mixture between a spreadsheet and a database. Um, and so there's a lot of great benefits to that. Honestly, I wasn't a fan when I first saw it, but then I worked with it a little bit, and now I use it for my CRM. I use it for my project management and just about, everything in terms of data organization and storage. Um, so real quick, just to back up a little bit, to show you an example of like front end versus back end. I would say this is more of a front end for this basic CRM. This is some mock data that I'm using. And so, it's very easy, user friendly to see. You have this is a deal. I can see the appointments, tasks, contacts, companies associated with that deal, versus the back end. And this is Airtable. I can't remember if I said that. The back end has this data more stored more similarly to something you might see with Google Sheets. So like this is just a table with all your deals, and then you have a table with all your contacts, and a table with all your companies, and so it just makes it easier to aggregate up. Um, and I know it's kind of hard to see right now, but I'll give you an example in just a minute. Um, so that's kind of how Airtable separates the front end versus the back end. But what I really like about it is, despite having it separated, is it allows you to still update stuff from the front end. So like here, I can say, okay, this is in progress. Okay, well now that's been one, right? I can still update it. It'll update the back end, that sort of thing. It flows two ways. And why that's important is it's important to have really good structured data on the back end to build automations off of. As a business automation developer, it's really hard to build strong, reliable automations off of bad data or inconsistent data or data that just isn't housed well or isn't structured well. Um, and so that's why that's really important, and that's why I really recommend it. Is a lot of times having something in Google Sheets is holding people back from having a really good way to automate things. But it's kind of hard to see that until you get into the weeds of it. And so let's see, there's another example I was going to show you. So yeah, so this is kind of what it would look like. And then, a spreadsheet is really kind of, I was playing around with it to kind of show you an example. Let me do this. Is really just the front end and the back end combined. The front end is the back end. That may not be the best way to explain it, but on a simplistic level, best way to explain it. And so just to kind of give a example is let's just take this simple screen right here, for example. We have some aggregate fields right here, the number of deals, pending deals, in progress, deal amount, uh, the deal amount that's been won. And then we have a detail list right here. And so Airtable does this really well because all the data's on the back end, right? And so there's no problems. I update this, it updates the back end easy. But here, let's say if I were to try and do that on this screen, okay, so let's insert some rows and then you know, then I would do deals and I would do uh, pending, in progress. But see, the problem is if I'm building an automation and I'm pulling from here and I need to reference these column headers to say when the closing date is within 5 days, send notification. Well, I now don't have that header way up here. I now have to do some logic to try and either start, let's say we start looking at the data on row 5. Okay, well that's great, but then if you ever go in and add something, then it'll break that. And so then I have to do some logic to try and find out, okay, where do these aggregate fields end and where does the data begin? And that gets complicated and takes a lot more time and ends up costing a lot more money to build an automation like that. And then still it's a lot more susceptible to break. So then you think, okay, well let's do this. Let's keep all the data you know, easy right here. Let's keep it, leave it alone. Let's just create a separate tab to use as our front end user interface. We have a formula here referencing the other tab for our details, and then we have some aggregate fields right here. Okay, and that works fine. But then what happens if you're working with multiple people, then sometimes people will get confused and they won't know, hey, if I'm putting in a new deal, am I supposed to put in a new deal on this tab, which is the back end, or am I supposed to put in a new deal on this tab? Um, and so let's say, I put in a new deal on this tab and I put in, $1,000 and I put in progress and, it sums it up and everything looks good. Okay. But unless you're to do some sort of macro, which gets really complex, that's not going to show up here. And of course, that'll get caught eventually and you'll fix it. But, that's just one example of something that could go wrong. So then you think, okay, well, let's then, protect this sheet. And sorry, I know I'm kind of going through an example, but this kind of you're going to see, there's all these different scenarios you have to take into account with something like Google Sheets versus it's a lot better um, elsewhere. And so, it's strict who can edit this, and so now no one else can edit this. But then what will happen is they come in here and they think, okay, I guess I can edit it, but they think, okay, well, I want to see how much we've lost. And so you have this locked off, so they can't do anything in here. So they go to the deals tab and let's say they put something in right here and they do, okay, sum if, how am I going to do it? Sum if, let's say lost maybe send this range. Okay, and so then they get what they want, and let's say they forget to delete this, right? Well, then now the next time I have automation running, it's going to pull in 3 blank rows, which that may not affect anything. It's also going to pull in a new column without a name. Now that might not affect anything, um, but again, um, it's best to have well-structured, clean data, uh, regardless. Um, and so, let's say I had an automation, which I wouldn't do this, but I had an automation that looks at the last column to include that data in the email. Well, the last column is notes. Okay, that's great. But let's say for some reason, you do this, then it's going to pull in, it's going to send a bunch of blank notifications. You won't get the notes in there. Now, I wouldn't do an automation like that, but there's all sorts of things. This is just a really small example. And let's say, you know, the automation forgets to take into account blank rows because there really shouldn't be any blank rows, then it'll send out blank notifications, or maybe it'll error out and the automation will stop, and you'll have to pay someone to go fix it. And it's just a little bit more work, is what it is. And there's really no way around that. Is you have to have one of these editable and the others not. The only other thing you could do is protect this sheet too, and then maybe create another tab with a form, and that's how you add or edit new records. And so it gets really interesting. And I know there were some other issues that you'd run into. Let me see if I can think of any. Um, yeah. Another thing is, like, if you didn't have this hidden, um, you can't from this tab, you wouldn't be able to, you know, change this to one that easily. It would break the formula, all sorts of stuff. And so Airtable really just cleans all that up. And it's, you have this interface. Whatever you do to edit here, it looks perfectly fine in the back end. If you want to add a new deal, you can add a new deal from here, uh, in progress, that sort of thing. Um, and so yeah, I really think. And that's just one example. I'm trying to think of some more. I typed up some notes and I ran out of time, so I'm just kind of going over what I can. Let's see. But yeah, and so another thing with Airtable, so okay, so it has the data structure, which is great, and it takes into account scenarios like I just showed, but also it's better at managing relationship fields, and preventing having to reuse uh, data. So like if you're reusing the same contacts on multiple deals, then, and this is kind of similar to a VLOOKUP, is you just do linked record and you do deals. Now this is already on there. Let me do deals too, right? And then you can do this from the interface side too, but you can link to specific ones, which just makes it so much easier. And again, everything you can do in Airtable, you can do in Google Sheets. It's just a lot more time consuming and a lot more vulnerable to being broken as you know scale your operation. So as things become more complex, the more complex they become, then I think you'd want to be looking at a Airtable instead of Google Sheets. And then another good thing, and this is just extras, you can aggregate up data. So like you'll see here, I have a separate tab for contacts, for companies, for deals, for tasks, appointments, all of that good stuff. And they all are kind of linked together with these linked records tabs. And so Airtable just makes it really easy to aggregate that up. So like I have this list of deals, I want to see this one. Uh, and I can see all my appointments, tasks, contacts, companies, all in one view. Uh, you know, or you can do a list view. You can also do a Kanban view, and just all sorts of great stuff. And there's some other cool stuff in here too. So like even if you want to aggregate on companies versus deals, and you can see all the deals for that particular company, it's just really a good way to aggregate and view your items. Again, Kanban board. I really like the calendar feature. I think that's really helpful. for sure. Um, for scheduling, and then yeah, linking records, having the user interface. Um, Let me see what else there was I was going to go over. To me, it's a lot harder to break formulas in Airtable than Google Sheets. Um, and then what else is there? I think that's about it. There's a lot more. There's a lot more, but it's hard to go over without getting into the details. Um, Last thing I'll mention is really the only pushback I ever really see with this is the pricing. To me, the pricing is well worth it. Um, right now, currently, I work with myself and an assistant, so $20 per seat per month, isn't that bad. Even if you do monthly, I think it doesn't go up. Oh yeah, 24 a month, not bad at all. Now, if you're working with a team of like 5 or 10 people, then I know it's a little bit of a larger decision. If that's the case, there's other options where you can just buy one seat here and your front end user interface. You can use a tool like Softer to build the front end user interface, and you can have unlimited users with Softer. And so that is again a good way to divvy up your front end and back end while maintaining that cost. Um, but yeah, definitely, I'd say if you're looking to scale your business, and if you're taking on more projects, and if your processes are becoming more complex and intricate, and you're wanting to build more automations, I think having well structured data is key to doing all of those things. And in order to have well structured data, I think it's very important to use a tool like Airtable to help separate your front end and your back end, uh, but still have them connected in a way that is efficient and effective. So, yeah, if you have any questions, just leave a comment or feel free to reach out, and take care.